Hi, welcome to the Georgia Department of Education Orchestra Community. My name is John Morton and I'm your orchestra community moderator. So for this month's set of webinars, we're going to be talking about sub-plans for the orchestra classroom. So we'll talk about what kind of things to think about as you're building sub-plans during the year, whether it's for an emergency or planned absence. And then we're going to talk about some ideas for some performance-based lesson plans, as well as some ideas for when you don't want to leave your students some playing activities to do if you're out. So let's first start talking about what should be included in your subplans. So just some starting points to think about. You want to prepare lesson plans that are going to support what your instructional goals are at that time. So, you want it to reinforce the content you're working on. It's always going to be better if students feel like it's going to tie back to what they're doing and it has value. So it doesn't always feel like busy work. Obviously, there are times we get an emergency that maybe we don't get to have that much say in what our subplans look like. But in general, especially if it's a prepared absence, we want to make sure that we really tie back to what we're working on in class so that it relates and has value to what the students are working on day to day. It's always a great idea if you can utilize your student leadership in your classroom to help make the class run smoothly when you're gone. At the beginning of the year, if you start that process early with students and even young students, can really be a great help to a sub as they come in. Many of our subs are not music certified, and so they don't maybe know the procedures in our classroom. So having student leaders that you trust kind of help the sub as they're there can be really, really useful. Making sure that you leave lesson plans that correspond with the tools that students have access to and already know how to use. So if your students don't have access to one-to-one tech, then probably don't want to leave a digital lesson plan that they can't maybe access in the classroom. Or if your students have never used Flip, probably don't want to have something that they're going to record on Flip, or if they've never done a Google survey. You just want to leave things that they're familiar with. So if your students are used to, using their Chromebooks or other devices in class every day in their other classes, then that should be a pretty easy transition for your class. If they're used to using Google Classroom and have that for your class, great. Whatever skills that you already have set up in place with your students, you want to utilize those tools so that it's an easy thing for them to do and you're not having the sub try to troubleshoot some of those issues that come up. You want to make your lesson something that can be given or executed by anybody that can be in the room. So, like I said before, it's rare oftentimes that we have music subs in our classroom. If you do, you're really, really lucky. In the last few years, sometimes we're lucky if we then have a sub. Oftentimes our colleagues are getting pulled to cover classes. And so we want to make sure that whoever comes in the room can very easily explain to the students what they're supposed to be doing. So you want to make sure that it's clear, the instructions are simple, and it's stuff that the students are going to understand. And then make sure that your assignment length matches at least the length of time of the class periods that you're going to be out for. So if you're going to be out, one class period and your class period is 55 minutes, then you want to make sure that that assignment will take 55 minutes. Generally, it's better to leave too much work than not enough, or maybe if you have some kids that are early finishers with assignments, you can leave some enrichment activities. But you definitely don't want to have something that the students can complete in 3 to 5 minutes and then they're staring at the sub for the next 50 minutes. So kind of planning ahead, if you're going to be out for 3 days at a conference, making sure you've left enough work for the students to be engaged in each day and all the way through the periods. So just some kind of general principles. Keep your sub information all in one place. And every school is a little different about how they like this kept, but whether it's in a binder, a box, a folder, have it all together. That way, sometimes we are out for emergencies or we have to be gone very quickly. We get called into a meeting, they get pulled for an IEP. You need to be able to have something that's very easy to hand off to somebody. In addition, if you've printed a sub plan and you're going to be out, it may be good to also provide a digital copy to a colleague that is going to be there that day. And that way, if the sub plan falls over or falls in the trash or something weird happens, one of your colleagues can reprint it or have access to it. So just having a digital format can be really useful too. And that way it's shared with someone else in your department. You definitely want to keep all your information in your subfolder up to date. So you want to make sure that whatever you put in there is the current year, current semester and the current place. So you don't want like the bell schedule from 4 years ago in there. Clean out the old stuff, put in the new stuff. Make sure that rosters and seating are definitely up to date. So it's very easy for them to know where kids are supposed to be when and in what class. Any important medical or allergy information for students, and any emergency procedures. Those are definitely the most important things to have up to date in your sub plans. Have a set of emergency plans already written for if you happen to really have to be out and you don't have time to write plans. Sometimes we get sick in the middle of the night, or our children get sick, or maybe there's a tragedy that happens, or just any number of things where we may have to be out very unexpectedly. So if something's already in your subfolder, or you kind of keep an activity in there, that way you can just tell your colleague or whoever's going to be going in to pull your subfolder, hey, my subfolder is here and the activity is in the folder. And that way it's done for you. It does take some maintenance keeping it up to date, but it can really save you a lot of time when maybe, suddenly you've got to be somewhere because there's an emergency. And then it's a great idea, no matter, every school has a different plan or policy, every district, for what your sub request procedure is. But you definitely want to know that information ahead of time. If there's a sub line you have to call, if there's an online request form, you want to know ahead of time. You don't want to be in the middle of the night you have a sick kid at home, scrounging around trying to find, how do I get a sub? So, especially as many of us have changed districts or gone to new schools, we want to make sure that you get used to those procedures and know that, because there will be a time that you're going to need it. So what are some of the pieces of information that should be in your subfolder? So we're going to talk first just a little bit about what kind of school information should be in there. The bell schedule for the day, and again, the current year's bell schedule, and making sure that's easy for the person looking at it to understand when the bell is going to ring for each time. Any general emergency or evacuation type procedures. Our school has an emergency binder in each classroom, and that sits with my subfolder. And so it always travels together whenever we have subs coming in. That's really important to you, especially, there could be a fire drill. There could be a real fire. There could be a tornado drill. Could be a real tornado. And so we want our subs to be able to access that information very, very quickly. What are the procedures for taking attendance at your school when a sub is in the building? How do they get it to the office? What do they need to do in order to make sure that that attendance is accounted for? Any duty information that you need to share with them, like if you have car line duty every morning at 7:10, then that needs to be in there, so that if they need to have, something taken care of, then you need to make sure that. Or if you already have arranged someone to cover that for you, that would be good information as well. Having the location of a colleague that they can go to and ask for help is very, very good. If your colleague in room 406 is down the hall, then you can say, please go see so-and-so in this room, and they will be glad to answer any questions. Because sometimes, subs don't always know, where are the faculty bathrooms? How do I get to the cafeteria? That goes along with including a campus map, especially if you teach at an older school that's more spread out, or a larger school. It can get pretty hard to navigate some of those spaces, especially if a sub is new to your campus or it's their first time visiting your campus. It'll help them kind of locate where the cafeteria is, where different things are, so that they know how to get around. So definitely a campus map can be very helpful. So what kind of class-specific information should you have in your subfolder? So not only should you have your bell schedule, but then your individual schedule of classes. Who's coming? What level of class is coming? Is it 6th grade? Is it 8th grade? Is this your advanced orchestra? Is this your 9th grade ensemble? Having kind of a list of who's coming when, so that they know, okay, this is the planning period, so no one should be coming in class right now. Also making sure that your rosters stay up to date. This is also particularly tricky at different points in the year. For example, like when we have a semester change, sometimes we get some flux in rosters, or the beginning of the year, but just keeping, when you reprint rosters for yourself, just reprint an extra copy for the subfolder, staple them in, put them in. Also, I think it's very important now, but always, but especially now, as we have more and more kids that are using different names than maybe the legal name. Most of our student information systems require students to use the legal name in the student information system, but they're allowed to use a different name at school, and whatever name they choose or nickname. go ahead and put that in the roster so that, if a kid does not want to be called whatever their legal name is, or it's unpronounceable, or they want to be called something more simple, put it in there. Save the trouble for that sub, of creating that environment with that student where that student's trying to say, no, no, that's not what I go by, blah, blah, blah. Also, if you have students who may have some really clear definitions or some changes of pronouns that may be helpful, and again, this is going to be level specific, school specific, and community specific. But it's important that we honor our students' choices and what they're used to being called, and we don't want to put a sub in a situation that could cause that sub to be feeling very uncomfortable with a student. So if you need to add any notes or things, that can be really helpful for a sub. Just to say, hey, this student prefers to go by they. That can be very helpful. Classroom rules and procedures, any general things you want to make sure are just handled, or that they know, hey, nobody should be in the instrument storage room, or this room stays locked, or nobody should be going to ask to go to the library to another teacher. Whatever your policies and procedures are, they must have the hall pass to go to the bathroom, anything like that. It's really helpful for a sub to know, hey, what are these kids go if they want to go to the bathroom? Is there a hall pass? What's your system? Next up is any students that have severe allergies or medical alerts. If you have a student, for example, that has a seizure disorder and is having seizures at school, it would be extremely helpful for you to have that listed. You wouldn't want that sub to be, unsure of what was happening or what to do. Or if you have a student who has an allergy, a food allergy, and you take that group to lunch, or that student has an EpiPen, these would be really important things to know. These could be, important health concerns for students. So making sure, and again, that's going to be based on your district's policy, but in general, I think it's very important that, if there's a really severe medical issue, if you have a student who's diabetic, that's, just you can put a little asterisk, hey, student's diabetic, can have a snack during class or whatever. Updated seating charts, it makes it so much easier when the sub comes in the room. If everyone has an assigned seat, they know where to go, and then the sub can check roll that way, especially in some of these larger orchestra classes where we have tons of kids, makes it much easier to take roll. I think this is really helpful. Provide your contact information. I have always put my personal cell phone number in my sub plans, and this is year 21 for me, and I've never had a sub call me or text me. Now, you can use a Google Voice number or whatever, but provide the sub your information so that if they really have they don't know how to solve something, they can get in touch with you. Names of students each period who can assist the sub. So some of your student leaders who can be helpful and making sure that, if the sub is like, when does the bell ring? How do we go? Where's the bathroom here? Those students can kind of be like, oh, okay, this is a student I can ask for help. I heard that you are the kind of student that can help me take roll or whatever. So leaving the names of some students that can really assist during class. And then last here, a place for them to leave feedback at the end of the day. It's really helpful if the sub has a spot to put like, hey, give me some information, like any great students in this class, anything you'd like to see different. Just give them an opportunity to share their experience, because often we see, only from our angle, but they're seeing things from the outside angle. And so they may be able to provide some feedback that would be helpful moving forward.